We're going to write a little bit of code on our own so that we can take a look at one of the best capabilities or features of a program is repeatability. And so go ahead and open Phony and we'll just kind of learn as we go. Go ahead and create a new file. And I'm just going to save it now. And I'm going to keep it right here in my ATTC3260 folder. You can put it wherever. And we're going to call this converter. Okay, and it'll automatically attach the .py on the end. All right, inside converter, we're going to write what's known as pseudo code. So pseudo code means that we're just kind of thinking out the logic of the code. It's not actually going to be able to execute the code until we write the correct syntax. So in order to put a comment in Python, remember we put a pound sign or a hashtag and then a space. And then we're going to describe what we're going to try to do here. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to be able to convert inches into millimeters. Okay, so we'll have inches into millimeters. So what do we need in order to have that happen? Well, first of all, we need to get the inches. Okay, so we'll get the inches from the user. Next thing that we'll need to do is we'll need to perform the calculation for conversion. And just so we have that handy, 1 inch equals 25.4 millimeters. And then finally we need to show the user the converted value. Okay, so let's go ahead and start up here at the top. And we will see how we do this. So convert to inches to millimeters, that's what we're working on. In order to get the inches from the user, we need to use our print statement, our input statement. So we say input, and then we provide a bit of text. Let's give it maybe a little more. What is the length in inches? And then put a space there. And this will allow us to get input directly from the user. Now, a problem that we're going to run into is how do we get that value back so that we can perform a calculation? So in order to do that, we have to assign a variable. So we could just call this something like user input. That would work. However, it could get kind of messy if we have other things that we're getting from the user. So maybe say user inches. Okay, so that when we refer back to it, we know that's what we're talking about is user inches. Now we need to take a look at the conversion. So the calculation to convert inches to millimeters is 1 inch equals 25.4. So if I take user inches and I multiply that by 25.4, that will give me a value of millimeters. So 1 inch, if the user put in 1 inch, then it would be 1 times 25.4, and the conversion would be 25.4 millimeters. All right, we need to give it a variable as well. Let's maybe give this an output millimeters and assign it that value. So output millimeters is the converted value for user inches. One thing that we do need to do is user inches. Right now on this line right here, user inches is a string. Okay, and we saw that in previous videos. We need to be able to, in order to do something with the string, we need to convert user inches into an integer. Hopefully you recall how we do that. We're going to come here where user inches is, and we're going to say int, and we're going to enclose that in parentheses. Okay, that will then convert user inches into integer. An important note is this is called casting. So we are casting the value of user inches into an integer. We're not reassigning. What I mean by that is the data type for user inches does not get changed. This is only casting it over. So if I were to call out again down here, and we will, when I call out user inches, that is a string. Okay, and that's important to have that or understand that distinction. All right, let's get a little more detail on what we want to show the user. So let's give them a nice message that says something like the length of 1 inch, maybe put that in there like that, period, is equal to 25.4 millimeters. Okay, so that's what we want to print out. The two things that are dynamic are the 1 and the 25.4. The rest of this line is static, right? So the static is just the text that says the length of, and then has a space for the value, and then we need to do inches, right? And we need to do is equal to, and then we have a space for the variable. Let's put a dash in there, then we can know that this is going to have some value. Not that dash, that dash. Okay. And let's spell equal right. 20, excuse me, this is an unknown, right? Or a dynamic value, and then we put in a millimeters. Hopefully this will help when we actually write the print statement. So we'll do print, and we're going to do some concatenation right here. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to print out this static text, the length of. So I'm just going to do the length of, and then put a space in there, and then I'm going to do a single quote. In order to concatenate, I'm just going to use a plus sign. Now I'm at this point right here where I need to enter in the dynamic text. This is the value of user inches. As you recall, we did not reassign user inches to an integer, right? User inches is still a string. So if I type in here user inches, and then I want to concatenate on there, and now I'm at this part. So I want to say in period, or inches period, is equal to. So in period is equal to. Okay, and we'll put a space there, and then we need to concatenate on there output Okay, that's the value that we received right here. And we need to concatenate on the very end of that the unit value. So this is in millimeters. And then we use a closing parentheses. Okay, now remember, this value is in strings. So as it stands right now, user inches data type is a string. The output in millimeters is actually what's called a float. A float is a number, but a float is anything that would have a decimal point. So the value that we would receive would come back to us as a float. So we need to cast output to a string. So I want you to think a minute on how that would happen. So when I cast, I'm just going to give it the data type that I want it to be, and I'm going to give it that closing parentheses. All right, so now let's run it and see, maybe we have an error in here, maybe not. So I'm going to go ahead and execute. So run the current script, And down here I get what is the length in inches. Let's do a real simple one to start with, just to make sure we've got this working. So as a user, I'm entering in 1 inch. And the program is taking that 1 inch. I'm dynamically populating this value right here, that 1, and then I'm dynamically populating 25.4. Just to make sure that it's really working, let's go ahead and convert something else. So let's try 2 inches. So that should be 50.8. Okay, so that's a basic conversion that we've created, and most of the stuff that we've covered should be fairly straightforward for you. But we want to now look at how do we improve upon this, the capabilities of this program. For one, I've got to rerun this every time. So we need a way to be able to continuously run. Also, it would be nice if we could add a conversion back, like maybe I want to convert from millimeters to inches. And so let's see if we can find a way to do that. All right, it's time for us to experiment on our own. So go ahead and pause the video. And what I want you to do is right below our conversion for inches to millimeters, I want you to come up with the code, including comments, that would help a user to convert millimeters to inches. So you should just be able to kind of look at the previous code and see what changes in our calculation. Once you've completed it, go ahead and unpause the video, and you will see the solution that I have implemented. So the first thing that we will tackle is let's look at what it would take to convert from inches, from millimeters into inches. So I'm just going to put this down here and say, let's do some of our pseudo code. And we're essentially just copying what we have up top. We're going to get user millimeters, and we are going to add a statement for the user to know what they need to input in. Okay, and then we will perform the calculation. And we know that 1 inch is equal to 25.4 millimeters. So that would mean that 1 divided by 25.4 inches equals 1 millimeter. Okay, then we do output in inches. And we're going to cast that value to a integer. And then we divide by 25.4. Now we need to show the user the converted value. So now we need to print that out. So the print statement will look like this. Let's come up with an easy one. 25.4 millimeters is equal to 1 inch. All right, and the print statement is print the length of user millimeters is equal to, then we'll concatenate, or excuse me, we'll cast it to a string, and this is output inches. And then we're going to add on there the inches. All right, so for now we'll just run it, and we'll have to do both calculations, but that's okay. So let's hit the run statement, and now we're down here. So our first calculation, we'll just throw in a 1 there, because we know that should be 25.4. And for what is the length in millimeters, let's just do 25.4, and we get an error. Oh, because we're casting it into an integer. So what we need to do is come back up here, and we need to change this from int into a float. So we go back, and 25.4. And the length of 25.4 millimeters is equal to 1 inch.